All right, a bit of a shorter video today. I just want to focus on one thing. Why I don't believe this cycle is over and the exact sign that I would expect to occur when the cycle is over. Because I'm starting to see a lot of talk, I guess, this is surrounding Bitcoin because the price action objectively looks quite weak at the moment. A lot of the talk is suggesting that Bitcoin has potentially put in a top. The market has been a little bit jittery, although ETH does look quite strong, and I want to talk about later in today's video the new trade that I made on ETH today. I actually just want to recenter our strategy and talk about where I think we are in the cycle and why I don't believe we've put in a top yet. And I also want to discuss why when Bitcoin does put in a top, that's not necessarily a bad thing for alts, at least in the short to midterm. If you notice I am in a different location, it's because I've officially moved house. My studio is still being worked on, hence why the production quality isn't fully up to scratch yet, but I think it's going to be really, really good once the studio is finished. So been busy moving all day and all week, but wanted to come on and give you guys this quick update and recenter ourselves a little bit and align on why I think this cycle is not over and talk about my positioning. And at the end of the video, I'm going to continue with the Blofin giveaway that we've been doing and give a few more accounts some free airdrops. So if you're signed up under my Blofin link, you'll know I've been doing this little series where I do random giveaways on the show. So if you are under my Blofin link, stick around until the end of the video to see if you actually won and check your UID because you may have gotten a nice little airdrop just like 3 people did last week. So firstly, let's take a look at Bitcoin. Let's give a quick little recap. We did end up breaking below this channel low here, but we have ended up pushing back towards the mid-range now. We are coming up for a bearish retest of the H4 money noodle, so I do think it's quite important for Bitcoin to actually stay above this 111.5k level. And there is a scenario here where it can get back inside the channel. If we break above this level and show some strength into the mid-range and hold above 114, then price action would start to look significantly better on Bitcoin. But objectively, it still is in a downtrend, so it's hard to get excited about this price action. Bitcoin does look like, at least for the time being, that it looks a little bit toppy, which is interesting because typically when you get tops on Bitcoin, this is typically a bad thing for the altcoin market. But I'm going to talk about in today's video why that may not be the case this time around and why history actually suggests that it can be a good thing for Ethereum and altcoins. Flipping the page here to Ethereum, it paints a very different picture. This is the daily chart now, and you can see that it's actually grinding up between a major resistance level at the prior all-time high, 4,850 that we recently retested, and it's grinding above the money noodle, which is coming up like this. So this is a classic bullish compression play that, in my opinion, is setting Ethereum up nicely for that next expansive leg to the upside. And I do think the longer it compresses here, and yeah, it may come down and it may sweep this zone again. We don't know exactly what's going to happen in the short term. It may continue to chop sideways for a little bit, but when we do eventually get that break, assuming it can maintain its structure above the daily noodle, which it flipped in May and has been holding ever since, we're now heading into September, then I do think the expansion can be quite a lot stronger on Ethereum. So it's kind of an interesting scenario at the moment where you have weakness from Bitcoin and you actually have strength from Ethereum. And that's something I want to talk about in a couple of minutes, what this actually means and what history suggests this means. But firstly, I want to read out a post which I thought was absolutely amazing from coin trader Nick, and where he gives his thoughts. He's one of the best accounts on X, by the way, at the moment, on where we currently sit in the cycle and why the cycle probably hasn't topped yet. And then I also want to give my thoughts on this post because I think it does a good job of summarizing why there may still be some juice left to squeeze, not only for Bitcoin specifically, but also for the rest of the market. So Nick's saying there's some evidence at the moment for an extended / right translated cycle view. US microcaps versus small caps are bottoming out, not topping out. Emerging markets versus FTSE 100 is bottoming out, not topping out. ARK versus gold is bottoming out and not topping out. All roughly mapping with the business cycle as one might expect. So I want to show you 2 charts. The first chart is the microcap ETF on the New York Stock Exchange, and you can see, as Nick pointed out, this doesn't look like a bearish formation. We actually just cleared the prior high, which breaks market structure to the upside above the 139 level, and we actually technically also have a higher low, suggesting the fact that on a high time frame, the market has probably put in a bottom for the small caps. You can also see it's been following a strong uptrend. So typically speaking, when alts have their top for the cycle, and Bitcoin has its top for the cycle, typically as a more risk-on asset versus equities, that will occur after the business cycle has played its course. But what we are seeing, as evidenced through the small cap index as well as the Nasdaq, the large cap index, which is all breaking to new highs, the business cycle doesn't appear to have come to a halt, and this would be exemplified through breakdowns to the downside, lower highs, and an actual reversal of trend from this uptrend to a downtrend. So people calling for, a top on Bitcoin, Ethereum, altcoins, that would be essentially saying that crypto would be going against or decorrelating from the stock market, which hasn't typically happened during previous bull market peaks. Now, even if you were to say that that was the case, that would also need to happen during a time where the Trump administration is actively pushing crypto quite hard. There's been many coins that they've been recently supporting. We saw CRO rally massively off the news of potential, Trump support. We've seen World Liberty Finance launching, and they're seriously pushing into DeFi. We have Eric Trump shilling Ethereum. Obviously, they've been, pushing Bitcoin as well. The ETFs, they're pushing into altcoins. World Liberty Finance has many deals with various parties. They're pushing into blockchain stablecoins. So basically what you'd be saying is crypto would be topping against the business cycle, against equities, and against the Trump administration pushing crypto. In my opinion, there's actually a stronger case for crypto outperforming given the support that it has this cycle and given the fact that the business cycle is still in full swing. And if you look at, stocks across the board, whether it's low caps, mid caps, or large caps, that's also exemplified by that. And the other thing is we're about to get rate cuts now. The September rate cut has caused some shakiness in the market, but presuming that the probabilities are correct, and I think at the moment they're sitting over 80%, and we do get a rate cut, this would further help risk assets. And I know a lot of that is already priced into the market, but the uncertainty over what we may or may not be getting, I think, is what's caused the slight jitteriness in the market. As Nick points out here, others historically peaks after EEM has made new highs, and US small caps for that matter. They're obviously only a sample size of 2 cycles, but contextually resembles prior 2 cycles as it relates to the business cycle. Don't think any of this matters for Bitcoin at the present, and think it continues to trade into a rally chop base rally fashion unless you do see blow off top dynamics, which could present themselves in Q1 2026. I don't think you get a prolonged and deep Bitcoin bear market. So what he's alluding to here is the fact that, and this is obvious if you go on to the weekly chart, Bitcoin has been essentially operating under the rally base rally format. So you can see here, it rallied, it forms a base, it rallies, forms a base, rallies, forms a base, deep base, rally, forms a deep base, rallies, forming another base. So it's pretty normal also to get this weekly money noodle retest, which we've done many times before since we flipped from bearish structure in 2022 to bullish structure in 2023. We have had many of these retests, and every single time we've retested this level, we've ended up bouncing. So can Bitcoin go down to 100K? Of course it can. If this does happen, this would just be another bull market retest and probably sets the stage for another base, which will lead to another rally as long as the business cycle continues. And I think this continues into 2026, as I've said multiple times on the show. So even if we did have further downside on Bitcoin, I wouldn't be particularly worried. Anyone whose view is that Bitcoin has top for the cycle here at 124K will be deeply disappointed in the relative shallowness of this correction, because you are less extended from the 200 weekly moving average today than in December 24, let alone in peak 2021. So what he's saying here also is that we are much less extended. Like, look at where the noodles, just our custom indicator, which is basically a moving average. You can see how overextended we were in 2021. You can see how overextended we were in 2024 comparatively to the noodle and the moving average. Now we are actually operating a little bit more muted in terms of price action above the moving average. So his whole argument is that if we went down and retested, there's actually less room to come back, because in 2024, a retest was 30%. In 2021, a retest, and we had a very deep one, was almost 50%. I remember that. It was pretty brutal. That shook a lot of people out of the bull market. So a retest now would only be another 12%. So comparatively, people might be disappointed, and I think he's talking to a lot of the people that are calling for a 85, 75. Peter Schiff came out and put as his price target the other day, Bitcoin. So I do agree with his thoughts in general. These basically echo my thoughts, and this is why I wanted to come on and share this post today and give you my opinions as well, because I think it's 100% spot on. I wouldn't expect a Bitcoin / altcoin top until the business cycle has topped. But what about Ethereum? This is where things get very, very interesting, because even when Bitcoin does put in its top, and I don't think it has, but even when it does, Ethereum doesn't necessarily top at the same time. In fact, what we have seen in the past is after Bitcoin puts in its top, Ethereum typically exhibits its strongest price action of the cycle as we see some rotationary effect in the market. So listen to this. This is crazy. In 2017, Bitcoin topped and traded 47% lower as Ethereum rallied 100% higher in the next 30 days. So Ethereum rallied a 2x in 30 days after Bitcoin was trading 47% lower in 2017. You might say, okay, that's because the market wasn't mature then. Well, heading 4 years later to the 2021 cycle, Bitcoin topped, went 27% lower as ETH rallied again, almost a 2x, 83% higher in the next 30 days. You can see it on the charts here, Bitcoin pulling back as Ethereum goes on a big run, just as it did in 2017. Now in 2025, and this may not be the cycle top for Bitcoin, but I just want to put it in your head that the rotationary effect can be quite strong. Bitcoin is losing high time frame structure and does look objectively weak, whilst Ethereum is looking extremely strong. It continues, to push into a major resistance zone, and as I mentioned before, that compression is likely going to be the thing that takes Ethereum even higher to new all-time highs and above. So I think it's important to note that when Bitcoin puts in its top, this doesn't necessarily mark the top for alts because alts are more reflexive to ETH price action than Bitcoin. Ethereum and alts can actually perform quite well even as Bitcoin starts to consolidate. So what we are seeing right now is a decoupling between Bitcoin and Ethereum and the altcoin market. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean it's a top for the cycle on Bitcoin. Bitcoin could still make new highs, but this type of price action is something that I think is necessary to observe because it highlights that there's still money to be made on alts, even when Bitcoin will eventually put its top in the cycle. And I think this is where it becomes dangerous to chart Bitcoin as your only cycle indicator, because Bitcoin is not going to be necessarily the best indicator of when to go risk on or risk off versus alts. I think a better thing to do is actually chart Ethereum, chart the money noodle, or you can use the 200 daily average, major momentum indicator on Ethereum as your support. Right now, you also have structural support at $4,000. Also chart total 3. You're going to see what the altcoin market structure is looking like a lot clearer on this. And you can see actually on the weekly, it's starting to grind upwards. It actually broke structure to the upside, which is quite good. Another chart that I like to use for altcoins that I think is better to chart than looking at Bitcoin itself is Others BTC. And you can see Others BTC is actually continuing to grind slowly higher. Bitcoin is looking weaker, but it's actually grinding to the upside. So this is a sign that the market has shifted a little bit as well. And this doesn't include Ethereum. So Ethereum isn't skewing this index. This is purely the altcoins, which are actually grinding up versus Bitcoin. And then the others chart as well is about to make a major reclaim, albeit it is heading into resistance here on the weekly. But this is actually bullish price action for alts, even though Bitcoin looks bearish. So be careful about not getting into the trap of using Bitcoin as your ultimate bull market indicator when Ethereum looks this strong. Obviously, if Bitcoin's dropping below 100K and it's breaking, key weekly levels, that support we talked about, you can use that as a general indicator, but there is definitely a scenario where Bitcoin tags that level, but Ethereum actually ends up breaking highs in the days following that. That's what happened in 2017, 2021, and price action is looking similar this time. So to summarize those 2 points, obviously I've gone into a bit more depth here, but to summarize, I don't think Bitcoin or altcoins have stopped due to where we are in the business cycle. And even when Bitcoin does top, I wouldn't necessarily take that as the ultimate bear signal for ETH and alts, especially when Ethereum is looking as strong as it is right now. So I actually shared in my Discord the other day that when Bitcoin came down into this 111K pocket, it has had a bit of a bounce since then. I actually longed, and instead of longing Bitcoin, I actually longed Ethereum. So whenever Bitcoin is going down into a key level where I'm interested in longing, instead of taking the Bitcoin trade itself, I'm using that as confluence to take a trade on Ethereum, because I think Ethereum outperforms from here on out. It just looks a lot stronger, and it's the chart that I'd rather be in. So I continue to add to my ETH longs. You can see here my ETH position on my trading account is over $360,000. I think it's 75 Ethereum. It's in profit, but I continue to add to this. And as I shared in the Discord, and as you can see relative to last show, this position continues to get bigger and bigger and bigger. I just want to say this account is not my full trading account. This is, my fun trading account. I started with 100K and I'm trying to run it up maybe to 500K to $1 million on the show. I think that would be really fun. But Ethereum is my main goal, and ETH betas. So, ENA, Link, PENGU, Ethereum, and a little bit of Bitcoin, just in case Bitcoin does have a bounce, makes up this portfolio here. So this isn't my main portfolio, but this is the trading portfolio that I'm showing on the show. I also think most people would be better off sticking mostly to spot. I think leverage is okay if you want to utilize the capital efficiency benefits that leverage gives you, so exposure to the upside of the market without having to outlay as much capital. Definitely makes sense for me, given the fact I have a lot of spot positions as well, but it doesn't make sense for everyone, so I don't want you to force leverage if you're not experienced. And if you are going to try leverage, do so with lesser size in the beginning whilst you're learning how to use it, because there were many times where I've screwed up by being over leveraged in the market. So I don't want you guys to get the wrong idea and be like, oh, Miles is using all this leverage, I should too. It's like, yeah, but I'm doing so within a smaller subsection of my portfolio, and I'm being very considered about when I actually do choose to use leverage. Now, if you guys aren't already in my Telegram, which is free, I highly recommend you do join, because I'm giving daily updates in there. So when I do take these sort of broader trades, obviously, the smaller cap and all the altcoin alpha and the AMAs, etc. Now, analysts are in the Mars High Club. But if you can't afford the Mars High Club, or you just want a taster of a little bit more, I think the Telegram is a good place to join. It's free. I'll leave a link in the description below. I know not all of you have time to watch these YouTube shows, and as you can see, I summarize my daily thoughts even on days where I don't upload. Like the last 3 days, it's been hectic. I've been moving, so I've been just dropping little updates in Telegram, as you can see. And people seem to be really enjoying them. So that's where you're going to get my pulse check on whether I'm adding new positions, whether I'm de-risking, and just general trends that I'm looking into. Like the other day, I posted a few sectors to look into. Let me actually show the post because it's good alpha. Haven't had time to, this is what I mean. I haven't had time to make a full YouTube video on it. I really have been wanting to, but instead I just dropped it in the Telegram. So prediction markets, I think this is an interesting trend. Sport fantasy markets, football.fun has kind of proven that concept. Although it's losing momentum, I think it's an interesting vertical to look into. World Liberty Finance, I'm actually still long World Liberty Finance, and I have some beta plays, which I think, like Block, for example, which I think can do well as this narrative continues to heat up. So that is another thing you should be looking into. And then, of course, Ethereum, which every time Bitcoin gets a big dip, I'm looking to add more Ethereum. Look, there's a chance, as I just mentioned before on the weekly, that Bitcoin actually does come down into this zone. Maybe that would correspond with like a low $4,000 to $4,200 Ethereum. I would add more in that scenario, and I have enough margin to cover myself in that scenario. I mean, my liquidation on these positions is like on Ethereum, it's 3,800 and I have capital. I can continue to prop this account up. I don't really want to expand this account that much more than 100K because that in margin, because that was the entire point of the account. But if I have to, I will, just to protect the position, because I still think ETH's going higher. Obviously, at some point there could be an invalidation and you won't just catch a knife for no reason, but I'll keep you updated as that continues to unfold. Keep in mind, I have a lot more spot than my actual position here in terms of my ETH exposure, because obviously you want to be exposed to ETH spot as well, just in case there's some crazy wick to the downside, which can happen in crypto. You don't want to be completely blown out if you're using leverage. You want to have spot exposure. So anyway, link in the description below to Telegram if you want those updates. It is free. We're closing in on 10,000 members, so it'd be amazing if you joined, and helps me hit 10K as well. It's the fast growth of the group's just a sign about how much you guys love it, and it's good to see like 4,000 views on these posts, sometimes hundreds of likes, which is absolutely amazing. Now, as I mentioned earlier in the video, I'm going to do a few random giveaways now. So I'm going to select 3 more people on my Blofin to win $100. This is going to be airdropped to your account. I have a fresh set of UIDs. I'm just going to close my eyes and scroll up and down on my keyboard this time instead of using the randomizer, and I'm going to make this one bold. So congratulations to number 25. I'm just going to pick someone random in the top bit here as well. All right, number 9, UF1, and let's do the lower third as well to keep it fair down here. Let's just hop around, up, down, scroll, and bang. All right, 53. Did it a different way today. So 53 starts with 239, ends in 814. 25 starts in 241, ends in 730, and 9 starts in 242, 485. You guys all want $100. I'm going to message my Blofin BD. He's going to add $100 to each of your accounts. So we are going to be doing more giveaways like this. We're going to be doing some cool stuff. I think at some point we're going to double portfolios for existing members of my Blofin link only. So if you do want to be in the running for this kind of stuff, and there aren't many people on this specific list, like only 66. So you had, what, a 1 in 20 chance of winning almost, 1 in 22 chance, given the fact I picked 3 people. sign up to my Blofin account using the link in the description and you'll get access to that. And right now we do have a very good deposit bonus campaign. So not only will you be in the running for future giveaways, but you will also be able to claim this amazing deposit bonus, which is up to $1,000. But if you deposit 100, you get $20 to trade with. So if you did want to open an ETH long, for example, you can do so risk-free. Just deposit 100, you get a free $20 futures bonus voucher. If you deposit $2,500, you actually get a $500 futures bonus. So this is the best value one in my opinion, because percentage-wise, it's the highest relative to the amount you get. So $500 on $2,500 is quite a strong deposit bonus. But if you have less capital, you can still get 20, 100, 200, 500, and obviously if you have the bigger bonus, you can get 1,000. But the reward kind of maxes out percentage-wise at 2,500. And of course, you'll be in the running for giveaways as well. So I'll leave the link to that and my Telegram in the description below. I'll be on here for future updates. Hopefully very soon, this studio is converted to something a lot nicer. We're doing acoustic paneling behind there like my other studio, and it's going to look very cool. The backdrop will be much cooler than my last studio. So yeah, on the vlog channel, I'm going to drop a full villa move-in tour and document that whole process. It's been crazy. I'm kind of excited to lock in again now that I have my setup back up and running, because no one likes moving. But we're good to go now, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out.